See that?
Yeah.
That's rich pine. The whole stump's rich, and you just get off of it as you need to, and it'll always be there.
Looks like you done been chopping on it.
I have. See that?
Yeah.
See the color?
Yeah. Pink.
Yeah.
I think it might be nice to have just the pink accents in the kitchen. You know? You have to do it right.
You dare reject her rock?
So this area that we're walking in right now is an old roadbed. Of course, nobody's been driving on it, and really even in my lifetime, so for 50 years or more. But you can see when it rains, it kind of turns into a river down through here. Over here you can see as it goes back down through there where all the leaves have been brushed aside, that's water. So you can tell it's been had a kind of real gully washer. But when it does that, it washes down this old roadbed back down towards the creek. I'm always hopeful that we'll find an arrowhead or something where it's been washed, but not one today so far. The day's not over yet though. You can see the old roadbed continues right here. Up ahead where they're all standing, it's kind of like an intersection. This road's meeting another road, where they're standing you could go left and go on down a roadbed that way, or go right and go up the mountain the other way. I like to think about in days gone by when people did travel this road, whether it was, you know, there was a few cars, or if it was by wagon or sled or by walking. If they met up, you know, if you ever run into somebody right there at the intersection, just like we do today at a stop sign or something, but boy, I'd like to sit there, and almost sometimes when I'm up here makes me think if I could sit still beside one of these, that I might just, if I waited patiently, you know, somehow magically I might be able to see some of those old timers as they went about their way.
What's the matter?
I'm hot.
You know why?
Because I'm wearing boots.
It's humid.
Yeah.
See right there, see all them water droplets?
Yeah.
It's hanging on this lake today. That tells you how humid it is.
That's why I wore shorts.
Yeah, but I mean, of course you can feel it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can actually see it right there, all that water, because it's not rained since, way sometime up last night. But everything's still wet.
You're right about that.
Really humid.
Ugh. Katie just found a bottle. We probably walked through here, well, no telling how many times, but never seen it. The lid's still on it. The lid comes off. It's a little stinky. I wonder what was in this. This kind of looks like a liquor bottle or something. Wait a minute. It says ball on the bottom. Cool. So no, it probably wasn't a liquor bottle. I don't know. It could still be. It doesn't smell like alcohol, which I think it would have stopped smelling like alcohol long ago. How about that? And the lid's still... That's so cool. Wait for it. The lid screws on and off. And it's whole. I had a feeling. And I looked down. On the top there? It just says like federal law prohibits sale or reuse of this bottle. So like you wouldn't go buy this at the store and then resell it. Which even modern stuff says that on it. Katie always has feelings, and they're always right. They're always valid. I don't know, I just had a feeling about it.
Ooh.
And you see the hole I pulled it out of? It's the glass. That part was, see, that hit the sun. How about that? Let's see. And the fact that it's whole is cool, but the fact that the lid screws on and off, that kills me. That's really cool. You never know whose that was and what they were doing with it. What's interesting though is that says Ball, like the, I mean that's the company,
does,
the mason jar company. I mean Ball Masons. And you know, It's got the those funny thing? numbers. I wonder if you could look it up. You could probably identify it on their website. I was just thinking to myself, as soon
they
as we
have
crossed
things
this
like
little hill, I thought, you know what, we should have brought our metal detectors. A metal detector, you know, it'd have had to carry it, but this might have been a cool place to metal detect.
There's a huge birch tree. Matt said we ought to try to tap that one someday. How tall you think that is, Matt?
It's probably 65, 70 feet.
Beautiful.
Pretty.
Look at that rock right there.
I like the hair.
Look at that little thing.
Awesome.
Isn't that pretty?
Yeah, gosh, that's beautiful. Daddy, you walk right past this bottle.
I think that's good enough.
Well, I wouldn't have seen it myself looking at the ground. It's pretty well camouflaged. I'd like to spend a little time at some point. There's something else up there. I can feel it. Look at our butter. It's in up here. Oh, I love it. This is the kind of...
So where we're standing in this wooded area, you can see back through here how it's kind of flat. You can see these piles of rocks. I think there's 1, 2, 3 over here. There's another one over here on the other side of me. So those piles of rocks, you think, well, what are they? That's where people, this flat area, although it's so wooded today, it was, at one time, it was a cornfield. So I can't remember that, not in my lifetime, but Pap could. He would tell me stories about it. He could remember when this was a field of corn. Those rocks are rocks that they dug out as they plowed the corn every year and got the field prepared to plant. You're always finding new rocks. Matt and I find them. We've been gardening where we live. We've lived there for almost 30 years and we're still throwing rocks out of the garden. Now our rocks are not as big as some of these. They're more of the small kind, but here by this creek bed you can see how big some of these are. So where I'm standing, directly behind me is a creek, Stamy Creek. This way in front of me, up a little rise is where there was a road, so that was the road bed. So just off the road, but between the road and the creek is where they had their cornfields back in the day. And they would pile these rocks here. Well, in a lot of places, and I'm sure this is not just Appalachia, probably throughout the world even, but definitely throughout the United States, but I can only speak to Appalachia. But in a lot of places in Appalachia, you will see when the same thing. Every year as they turned over the ground, they dug out more rocks, and they would lay them in rows. I mean, they would build fences out of the rocks. They didn't use any kind of mortar or anything like that. They was just stacked rocks, and they're really beautiful. I've seen a lot over in the Smoky Mountains, kind of in the park, you can see them. They built those, they had to do something with the rocks, so it made sense that they would use those rock walls. They used it for boundaries, like property boundaries. They would use them to keep animals in a place or out of a place, you know, kind of around their garden. Over in the Smokies and here too, where the ground can be so steep, a lot of times they use those rock walls to channel water, so the runoff of water. that would slow it down. And over time, if it was like on a steep grade, you can think about it as the leaves and the dirt got pushed against that rock wall, it built up the ground. So maybe they had a more flat, little, almost like a terrace, but nature was doing it, you know, a place to plant there. But I was going to read to you out of the, of course, out of the dictionary. I didn't want to bring the dictionary all the way up here with me because it's too heavy, so I printed this out. This is what it has to say about it. A rock fence is a noun, a fence constructed of rocks or stones with no mortar. Same as a rock wall or stone fence. According to 1983 Peterson East Tennessee folk speech, rock fence and rock wall were equally common in East Tennessee, generally, and in the Smokies. So in 1936, it was documented that it was used, rock fence was used in Swain County and in Madison County, North Carolina. In 1956, the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, they recorded and documented different people's memories and things that they thought about things. I've got a little friend here, a little butterfly. Oh, how sweet is that? Oh. That's great, ain't it? I hope you guys can see it. I wish I had somebody to... Hey, Corey. I need you. Run. Hurry. Bring your camera. So the butterfly went from my hand to Matt's hats. That was sweet, wasn't it? So I go back to, in 1956, the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, they recorded people and documented different things. So this was just documented. Somebody said, I used to play out on the old rock fence. In 1967, it was documented that a fence made of stone or rock without mortar, it was documented in Brasstown, which is good, that's where we're at, although my people in Brasstown didn't build fences, they just piled rocks. And then in Gatlinburg and in Maryville, Tennessee too. So in 1973, another Great Smoky Mountain National Park documentation says we'd turn off there at Uncle Alec Cole's with a big rock fence on one side and a big rock fence on the other, and that divided the road, you know, and divided your property, where they'd make the big fences with their rocks where they'd haul from the fields. In 1982, Maple's Memories, there are many rock fences still standing throughout the park. They marked boundary lines and kept the stock from straying. They were started when we plowed and tried to clear the garden. Every time you would hoe, it seems like you would clang down on one of those rocks. 1991, Haywood Home was the name of the book. Daddy kept an ox car and sled for hauling rock out of the fields. We built rock fences with most of the rock because we didn't have anything else to do with them and they had to come out of the fields. So that's the documentation of the rock fence. I'll be interested to know if you're familiar with rock fences in your area, if you've seen them, or if maybe if your family, when they get out rocks out of the fields, if they piled them into rock fences. But this is just a really special area to me. I have such memories of Pap telling me he could remember the corn. They're not too far from where we're at right now. He could remember a stone stable where they kept horses, probably the horses that they used to plow the field, or mules. It may have been mules instead of horses. But he could remember those things. And as I grew up, he would tell me those stories, and we would walk in the woods, and I would just be mesmerized by the people who once called this area home. Some of them were people from my family, and some of them were just friends and neighbors. Look at him. I put him right down on my head. So the big tree that I was standing in front of is a huge oak tree. Oh my goodness, it's huge. You could tell by me standing in front of it. So beautiful, so tall. Since the oak trees grow so slow, I know that oak tree was here. It may have been a little small tree, but it was here when they were still growing corn in this field. I hope you enjoyed this trek up the creek with us, and I hope you'll drop back by often as we celebrate Appalachia.
that time will come up to 11.